So I'm in the middle of Leicester city centre, and I have been helping out at a vegan speed dating event. So yes, I do other things other than just giving talks around the country. I actually do help out and help run events like vegan speed dating. And tonight's event has been great because we've had so many matches. We're pairing people off, like-minded people, vegan people who want to maybe share some romance. So anyway, I've met Louis here with me. Louis attended the speed dating event, and Louis and I got talking just before the event, and well, he actually shared some really interesting information with me, and I thought it would be great to actually share this with you guys. So hi Louis.
Hello.
This is Louis. By the way, single women, he is available. So so anyway, that's not what this video is about. So Louis, you were telling me a little bit about what made you go vegan. So
yes,
let's just go back. Where did you used to work?
Well, I got a job on a farm in Leicestershire, and I had a number of chores there basically. The main one was producing food for the farm. And part of that was some basic care for some of the animals, and essentially the preparation of the finished product, which would have been the meat. So it was everything from start to finish basically. And generally when I started, I didn't really have a problem with that at all. I was absolutely fine doing the job, handling the meat, cooking the meat, regardless of what kind of animal it had come from. But after working at the farm for about, well, I suppose after 6 months and seeing some of the life cycles of the animals, I realised that they had a lot more to them than just the meat that we were eating, basically.
So what do you mean? I'm just going to let these people pass because we are in the city centre, in a public place. So when you say that the animals had a lot to them, I mean, you described some things to me earlier on. What do you mean that they had a lot to them?
Well, I think when the customers came to buy meat from the farm, they only saw it as meat, but seeing the animals before that, you realise that each animal had its own personality in a sense. And I think what I noticed over the 6 months, that some of the animals started to recognise me, some of them started to actually interact, and some of them genuinely wanted my attention as well. And at that point I realised that the animals, or at least some in particular, were as much an entity as perhaps, I don't know, as any of my friends, I guess. You know, it's still kind of unusual to sort of describe animals as that, coming from the background I have, but I became quite, I don't know, in a sense I did sort of care for their well-being, and their comfort was, you know, I enjoyed seeing it basically, and it was heartbreaking to then see them on a table cut up. It was, yeah.
So basically, I mean, Louis was explaining to me earlier on. I mean, I remember one thing that you said, and that's kind of stuck in my mind all evening. You said that, you know, some of the chickens and the sheep and the cows, the same that you sort of reared and then later processed, those same beings, they would run to you and they'd want you to pet them and play with them, right? So in terms of these beings, these animals, you know, when people say that, oh, they're just animals and they don't feel anything, you've clearly experienced the opposite.
There were two in particular. There was one sheep called Marcus, in fact, and he was the main breeding ram of all the other sheep, and he had such an interesting personality. He would he would literally. He was so brave for a start, and he was. I mean, he sort of craved interaction. Like he loved being petted. He'd sort of follow you around. If you turned away and walked through him, he'd bleat until you turned back and went to see what was up. He was just a really interesting character. And if he saw me sort of driving away at the end of the day, he'd sort of shuffle back into the corner of his pen and sort of, I don't know. It was just, it made you think that there was a lot more going on inside them than just, eat, grow, die. There was a whole sort of purpose to their existence, which most people completely overlook. Another one which was great fun was there's this little brown hen which was one of the egg-laying hens. I worked in the shop area for a while. I used to sort of basically fill my pockets with handfuls of crumbs, and I think that was probably one of the reasons it followed me around. But after a while it sort of used to come to see me and sort of I don't know. I mean, chickens are supposed to have very complex methods of communication. They're supposed to have all sorts of different eye movements and head movements and clucks, and I could see that it was, in its own way, trying to interact. I don't know if it was expecting sort of reciprocation on its level, but it was certainly trying to, express itself, which I thought was fascinating in a sense. And these were all animals which essentially were, once their use had expired, they were just going to be chopped up, basically. Once they'd grown to their certain size, once they'd stopped laying a certain amount of eggs, their purpose was obsolete. And I thought that was a really cruel existence for something which actually, I don't know, had so much intelligence. Maybe not the same kind of intelligence that we register intelligence by, but in their own sense, they really did have quite important lives to themselves.
So this experience that you actually had, if I may share with everyone, Louis actually went vegan after his experience of working as a farm worker on this farm in Leicestershire, which is absolutely amazing. And I asked Louis that if he made this connection and recognized that these animals were sentient and had the ability to feel and form attachments, what's stopping all the other farm workers and farmers and those that work in abattoirs from making the same connection? Do you want to just very quickly tell the viewers what you shared with me?
I think the farmers I used to work with knew very well that the animals had personalities, because they used to discuss them amongst themselves. I mean, there were a lot of cattle on the farm, and they used to say, oh yeah, this particular cow, it always hangs out with that other one. This particular one always gives a bit of aggro when we try to move it around. This one seems to bully all the others. So they knew very well that the animals had very individual personalities, but at the same time I think they spent a lot of time convincing themselves that what they were doing was perfectly fine. I think the only way they sort of managed to do it repeatedly day in, day out was by telling themselves that they weren't actually causing that much pain and they weren't really suffering. And they used to tell each other things like, I suppose that, one thing I heard, it was actually a vet who came to visit. I heard a vet saying that once the calf had been taken from one of the cows, just give the cow some grass and it'll be perfectly fine. And obviously the cow seeing the grass, probably would try to eat it, but that doesn't mean that it's completely fine. It's just lost its child essentially. But I mean, in every part of the system, right up to the animal carers, they were reassuring themselves that it was okay. So there's a lot of reinforcement that I think they were continuously having to give themselves to make it okay, I suppose.
Disassociate themselves. Yeah. And just going back to what Louis said, for those that don't know, the calf being separated from the cow, there's one reason for that, and that reason is so that the milk that the cow produces after the calf has had the initial colostrum, which is the first milk, if the calf is then continued to be allowed to drink the mother's milk, well, the supermarket shelves would not be full of the white stuff which we so abundantly drink and think it's absolutely normal. Another being, a baby, has not been able to drink its mother's milk, and that's why this calf would have been separated. So I want to just say thank you so much to Louis. I have actually just literally dragged him away from this speed dating event, and I hope I haven't actually severed any potentials for him, and I'm really sorry for that. So I'm going to get him back in there and join him back up with whoever he was talking to. Thank you for listening. Subscribe to my channel. It's Imperfectly Vegan. Share this message. You've heard it from somebody who worked on a farm themselves. This is not just me theoretically talking about it, having read about it, having educated myself. This is from somebody who actually worked on a farm in Leicestershire, who has experienced everything from the beginning, from breeding, rearing to slaughter, and he went vegan from that experience. So, what more information do you need? All these labels, humane, slaughter, the animals being happy when they're being reared and bred. That's not true at all. These animals have a right to life. We're not trying to give them voting rights. We're not trying to give them the same rights as human rights, but they have the right to life, and it's about time we as humans left them alone. So, Louis, thank you so much for your time. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.